The rain hammered the recruitment office windows as David Martinez sat across from Sergeant First Class Thompson. At 19, David had tried college for 2 semesters before dropping out. His parents had stopped asking about his future plans weeks ago. "So you want to know what basic training is really like," Sergeant Thompson said, leaning back in his chair. The office walls were covered with photos of soldiers in various locations around the world. Some looked proud, others exhausted, all looked different than when they had first walked through those doors. David nodded. He had heard stories from his cousin who served in Afghanistan, but those tales seemed like fiction. Men running through mud, crawling under barbed wire, learning to fire weapons with deadly precision. It felt like something from a movie. 13 weeks, Thompson said simply. 13 weeks to transform civilians into soldiers. When you walk out of Fort Benning, you'll be armed to kill. That's not Hollywood talk, son. That's reality. The sergeant pulled out a thick folder filled with documents and photographs. David saw images of young men his age carrying heavy packs, rappelling down towers, and standing at attention in perfect lines. Their faces showed determination mixed with exhaustion. Basic combat training isn't a summer camp, Thompson continued. From day one, we strip away everything you think you know about yourself. Your comfort zone disappears. Your old habits die. We rebuild you from the ground up. David shifted in his seat. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and, somewhere in the building, a phone rang persistently. He thought about his current life, sleeping until noon, playing video games, working part-time at a grocery store. The routine felt empty, purposeless. "What happens on the first day?" David asked. Thompson smiled, but it wasn't reassuring. "Reception. You'll get off the bus at 0:30 with dozens of other recruits. Drill sergeants will be screaming before your feet hit the ground. You'll have 30 seconds to grab your bags and form a line. No talking. No looking around. Welcome to the Army." The sergeant explained that reception lasted several days. Medical examinations, paperwork, uniform fitting, and initial processing. Recruits received their first taste of military structure during this phase. Wake up at 4:30 a.m. Lights out at 9 p.m. Everything done at double time with drill sergeants correcting every mistake. Physical training starts immediately, Thompson said. Push-ups, sit-ups, running. Lots of running. If you can't do 20 push-ups now, you'll be doing hundreds by week 3. The human body adapts faster than most people believe. David tried to remember the last time he had exercised seriously. High school football felt like a lifetime ago. He wondered if his body could handle the physical demands Thompson described. The sergeant opened another section of the folder, revealing training schedules and curriculum outlines. Weapons training begins in week 4. You'll learn to disassemble, clean, and fire the M4 carbine. Every part of that weapon will become familiar. You'll know its weight, its feel, its capabilities. Is it scary? David asked. Holding a real weapon? Thompson considered the question carefully. Respect is the right word. Fear keeps you safe. Overconfidence gets people killed. We teach both technical skills and mental discipline. A weapon is only as reliable as the person holding it. The conversation shifted to living conditions. Barracks housed 60 recruits in open bay dormitories. Privacy disappeared completely. Shared bathrooms, communal showers, and constant supervision became normal. Personal space reduced to a wall locker and a foot locker. Drill sergeants know everything, Thompson explained. Who's struggling with academics, who's having family problems, who's thinking about quitting. They push harder when you want to give up. That's their job. David learned about the different phases of training. Red phase focused on adjustment and basic military customs. White phase introduced combat skills and weapons training. Blue phase emphasized field exercises and graduation preparation. Each phase brought new challenges and higher expectations. Mail call happens twice a week, Thompson said. Letters from home keep spirits up, but they also remind recruits what they're missing. Some soldiers get stronger thinking about family. Others get homesick and struggle. The sergeant described typical training days. Physical training before sunrise, followed by breakfast and morning formation. Classroom instruction covered military history, first aid, and combat tactics. Afternoon sessions included weapons handling, drill and ceremony, and field craft skills. Field training exercise occurs during week 10, Thompson explained. 5 days in the woods. No barracks, no hot meals, no comfort. You'll dig fighting positions, set up guard rotations, and practice everything you've learned. It's the closest thing to real combat conditions during basic training. David imagined himself crawling through mud, carrying heavy equipment, and sleeping on the ground. The mental picture seemed both terrifying and exciting. His current life offered no similar challenges or growth opportunities. Thompson pulled out graduation photos showing proud families watching their transformed sons and daughters. The young faces looked confident, disciplined, and mature. Their posture had changed. Their eyes held new determination. Physical changes are obvious, the sergeant said. Muscle development, weight loss, improved endurance. Mental changes run deeper. Confidence, leadership skills, ability to handle stress. These qualities serve soldiers throughout their careers and civilian lives. The rain outside had stopped. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating dust particles floating in the air. David realized he had been sitting in that office for over an hour, absorbing information that could reshape his entire future. What happens to people who can't make it? David asked. Some quit during the first week, Thompson admitted. Homesickness, physical demands, mental pressure. Others struggle through specific training phases. We provide support, but ultimately each recruit must find their own motivation to continue. The sergeant emphasized that drill sergeants wanted recruits to succeed. Their harsh methods served specific purposes: building resilience, teaching attention to detail, and creating unit cohesion. Soldiers who survived basic training together formed bonds that lasted decades. Combat training includes hand-to-hand fighting, marksmanship, and tactical movement, Thompson continued. You'll learn to work as part of a team while developing individual skills. Modern warfare requires both cooperation and personal initiative. David thought about his friends back home. Most were still figuring out college majors or working entry-level jobs. Military service represented a completely different path: structured, demanding, and potentially dangerous. It also offered purpose and clear advancement opportunities. The conversation concluded with Thompson explaining next steps. Delayed entry program allowed time to prepare physically and mentally. David could continue working while attending periodic meetings with other future soldiers. Final commitment came with signing actual enlistment papers. This decision affects your entire life, the sergeant said seriously. Take time to consider everything we discussed. Talk to family members, research military occupational specialties, and make sure you're ready for the challenge. David stood up, shaking Thompson's hand. The grip was firm and confident. Outside, traffic moved slowly through the late afternoon streets. People were heading home from regular jobs, following familiar routines. David wondered if he was ready to leave that predictable world behind. That evening, he sat in his childhood bedroom, surrounded by posters and trophies from high school. Everything felt smaller now, less important. The sergeant's words echoed in his mind: 13 weeks to transform civilians into soldiers. David pulled out his laptop and began researching Fort Benning, drill sergeants, and basic training experiences. YouTube videos showed recruits struggling through obstacle courses, learning to march in formation, and celebrating graduation day. The comments section filled with stories from veterans sharing their own basic training memories. His phone buzzed with text messages from friends asking about weekend plans. David stared at the screen, realizing how disconnected he felt from their concerns about parties and social media drama. The conversation with Sergeant Thompson had shifted something inside him. Before bed, David did 20 push-ups. His arms shook by the 15th repetition. If he chose this path, physical preparation would become essential. The next 13 weeks would determine whether he possessed the strength and determination to become a soldier. The bus rolled through darkness toward Fort Benning, Georgia. David pressed his face against the window, watching highway signs count down the miles. 43 other young men shared the vehicle, most sleeping or staring silently ahead. The driver, a civilian contractor, had made this trip hundreds of times. At 3:47 a.m., the bus stopped at a brightly lit gate. Military police officers checked identification and paperwork before waving them through. David's stomach churned with nervous energy. 3 months of preparation had led to this moment. "Welcome to Fort Benning." The drill sergeant's voice exploded through the bus speakers. "You have 30 seconds to exit this vehicle and form 3 ranks on the yellow lines. Move. Move. Move." Bodies scrambled toward the exits. David grabbed his duffel bag and stumbled down the bus steps. Floodlights illuminated a concrete pad where 3 drill sergeants waited. Their campaign hats cast shadows over stern faces, and their voices created a wall of sound that shattered the night silence. "Drop your civilian attitudes right here. You are no longer in mommy's house. You belong to the United States Army. First rank, attention. Second rank, attention. Third rank, attention." David found himself in the middle rank, struggling to stand straight while holding his heavy bag. The recruit next to him, a skinny kid from Ohio, trembled visibly. Behind them, someone whispered a prayer. Drill Sergeant Rodriguez paced in front of the formation. His uniform was immaculate despite the early hour. Combat boots struck the pavement with measured precision. When he spoke, every word carried absolute authority. "Reception Battalion will process you over the next 4 days. You will receive medical examinations, uniform issue, administrative processing, and your first taste of military discipline. Some of you will discover this life is not for you." The door remains open for exactly 72 hours. The group marched to a large concrete building filled with fluorescent lights and plastic chairs. Forms and clipboards covered every surface. David filled out paperwork until his hand cramped, providing information the military already possessed. The process served a deeper purpose, establishing immediate compliance with orders. Medical processing began at dawn. Blood draws, vaccinations, vision tests, and physical examinations consumed most of the first day. David waited in lines with dozens of other recruits, all wearing civilian clothes that looked increasingly out of place. Hernandez. Martinez. O'Brien. Report to Station 7 for dental examination. The dental exam revealed 2 cavities David hadn't known existed. A Navy corpsman explained they would receive treatment during basic training. Military medicine fixed problems quickly and efficiently, prioritizing mission readiness over comfort. Uniform fitting happened in a massive warehouse filled with racks of military clothing. Specialists measured David for dress blues, combat uniforms, physical training gear, and boots. Everything came in standardized sizes and patterns. Individual style disappeared completely. "This is your battle dress uniform," explained Specialist Adams, holding up camouflaged clothing. "It will protect you in combat environments while helping you blend with natural surroundings. Take care of your equipment, and it will take care of you." David tried on combat boots for the first time. The leather felt stiff and heavy compared to his civilian sneakers. Breaking them in would require weeks of daily wear and careful attention to hotspots and blisters. That evening, the recruits moved into their assigned barracks. Bay 43B housed 60 men in a long, open room filled with bunk beds and wall lockers. David claimed a bottom bunk near the center of the bay, storing his civilian clothes in a footlocker that would remain locked for 13 weeks. Lights out came at 2,100 hours. The barracks fell silent except for occasional whispers and shifting mattresses. David stared at the bottom of the bunk above him, thinking about his decision to enlist. There was no backing out now. Reveille sounded at 0430 hours. Fluorescent lights blazed as Drill Sergeant Williams entered the bay, banging a metal trash can with a wooden baton. Rise and shine, ladies. Physical training formation in 15 minutes. Anyone not ready will enjoy extra motivation during today's workout. David stumbled toward the latrine with 40 other half-awake recruits. The bathroom accommodated only 12 people at a time, creating immediate pressure to move quickly. Shaving, brushing teeth, and personal hygiene happened at maximum speed. Physical training began with stretching exercises led by Drill Sergeant Martinez. The early morning air felt cool against David's skin as he attempted to touch his toes. His hamstrings protested, reminding him of months spent sitting at computers and behind store counters. Physical fitness is not optional in the United States Army, Martinez explained while the platoon held plank positions. Your life and the lives of your fellow soldiers depend on your ability to perform under physical stress. Weakness kills people in combat. The first workout included push-ups, sit-ups, and a 2-mile run around the company area. David managed 15 push-ups before his arms gave out. His 2-mile time of 18 minutes and 32 seconds placed him in the bottom quarter of the platoon. Breakfast followed physical training. The dining facility served scrambled eggs, bacon, toast, and coffee. David ate quickly, learning to fuel his body for the demands ahead. Conversation remained minimal as drill sergeants patrolled between tables. Classroom instruction began at 0800 hours. The first lesson covered military customs and courtesies, proper saluting, addressing superiors, and basic regulations. David learned the difference between enlisted ranks, warrant officers, and commissioned officers. Military courtesy shows respect for the chain of command, explained Staff Sergeant Johnson. These traditions connect you to centuries of military service. Every soldier who came before you followed these same customs. The afternoon brought combat skills training. Drill Sergeant Thompson demonstrated proper tactical movement, how to move quietly, use available cover, and communicate with hand signals. The skills seemed simple in demonstration but proved challenging in practice. Combat situations require instant decision-making under extreme stress, Thompson explained. We train these movements until they become automatic responses. Muscle memory can save your life when conscious thought becomes impossible. David crawled through a dirt course, keeping his rifle elevated while moving towards simulated enemy positions. His uniform collected mud and grass stains. Sweat dripped into his eyes, making it difficult to see clearly. That evening, drill sergeants conducted detailed inspections of personal areas. Every item had a designated location and specific arrangement. Toilet articles aligned perfectly, clothing folded to exact specifications, and boots positioned at precise angles. Attention to detail separates professional soldiers from amateur warriors, Drill Sergeant Rodriguez explained while examining wall lockers. If you cannot maintain your personal equipment, how can we trust you with weapons and sensitive military technology? David's locker failed inspection. His t-shirts were folded incorrectly, and his shoes sat at the wrong angle. The drill sergeant explained proper techniques while David refolded everything under close supervision. Mail call brought the first letters from home. David received cards from his parents and girlfriend, along with a care package containing snacks and toiletries. The familiar handwriting and family photos provided emotional connection to his previous life. Some recruits broke down reading letters from home. The contrast between military life and civilian comfort became overwhelming for several soldiers. Drill sergeants allowed brief emotional moments before redirecting attention back to training requirements. Homesickness is natural, Rodriguez told the platoon during evening formation. Missing family proves you have strong emotional connections. Channel those feelings into motivation to successfully complete training and make your families proud. Week 2 intensified training demands. Physical fitness requirements increased daily. Academic instruction covered first aid, military history, and basic combat tactics. Field exercises introduced camping skills and outdoor survival techniques. David's body began adapting to the physical demands. His push-up count increased to 35. His 2-mile run time dropped to 16 minutes and 15 seconds. Muscles developed definition he had never possessed as a civilian.
mental adaptation proved more challenging.
The constant pressure, lack of privacy, and strict adherence to schedules created stress David had never experienced.
Some nights he lay awake wondering if he possessed the inner strength to complete basic training.
Drill sergeants provided individual counseling for struggling recruits. They identified personal motivations and helped soldiers connect military service to their long-term goals. The counseling sessions revealed the human side of leaders who seemed impossibly harsh during training. Everyone struggles with different aspects of military life, Drill Sergeant Williams told David during a private conversation.
Physical fitness, academic requirements, emotional adjustment.
The key is identifying your weak areas and working systematically to improve them. David learned that drill sergeants monitored every recruit's progress closely. They recognized signs of depression, anxiety, and potential self-harm. Their harsh training methods served specific purposes, building resilience and mental toughness required for combat situations. By the end of week 2, several recruits had voluntarily withdrawn from training.
Their empty bunks served as reminders that basic training was not guaranteed success.
David watched buses carry former classmates back to civilian life, wondering if he would join them. The remaining recruits formed stronger bonds as training progressed. Shared hardships created connections that transcended civilian social boundaries. David found himself working closely with soldiers from different backgrounds, discovering common ground through mutual struggle.
Evening study sessions became opportunities for peer assistance. Recruits who excelled in academics helped those struggling with written tests.
Physical fitness leaders provided training tips for soldiers working to meet minimum standards.
Teamwork begins here, Rodriguez explained during a leadership class.
In combat, soldiers depend on each other for survival. Trust develops through shared hardship and mutual support. Your battle buddy's success contributes to mission accomplishment.
David realized that basic training was transforming more than his physical capabilities.
His perspective on challenge, failure, and personal limits was shifting fundamentally. Problems that had seemed insurmountable 3 weeks earlier now appeared manageable through systematic effort and determination. The rifle range stretched across sandy hills dotted with target stands at various distances. David held his M4 carbine for the first time, feeling its weight and balance. The weapon seemed both familiar and foreign. He had seen similar rifles in movies and video games, but this one carried lethal potential. "This weapon will become your best friend," announced Drill Sergeant Thompson as Alpha Company formed ranks behind the firing line. "It will keep you alive in combat if you respect it, maintain it, and master its capabilities. Treat it carelessly, and it will fail when you need it most."
Weapons training consumed the 4th week of basic training.
Every recruit learned to disassemble, clean, and reassemble their rifle within specified time limits. David practiced the sequence until his hands moved automatically, charging handle back, bolt carrier group out, firing pin extracted.
The mechanical aspects came easier than expected.
Each component had a specific function and position. Attention to detail during cleaning and maintenance prevented weapon malfunctions that could prove fatal in combat situations.
David learned to inspect every part for wear, damage, or fouling.
"Marksmanship is both art and science," explained Staff Sergeant Martinez during their first live fire instruction.
Consistent shooting requires proper body position, sight alignment, breathing control, and trigger squeeze.
Master these fundamentals, and you can hit targets at ranges that seem impossible.
David adopted the prone-supported firing position, lying flat with his rifle supported by a sandbag.
The position felt awkward initially, but it provided the stability needed for accurate long-range shooting. His left elbow dug into the ground while his right shoulder absorbed the rifle's recoil.
Sight alignment required lining up the front sight post within the rear sight aperture while focusing on the target.
David learned to adjust his point of aim based on wind conditions, range estimates, and ammunition characteristics.
Small errors in sight picture resulted in dramatic misses at distance. Breathing control affected shot accuracy more than David had anticipated.
He learned to fire during his natural respiratory pause, the brief moment between exhaling and inhaling when his body remained completely still. Firing while breathing created unwanted movement that threw shots off target. Trigger control demanded steady pressure straight back without disturbing sight alignment. David practiced dry firing for hours, developing muscle memory for the perfect trigger squeeze.
The actual moment of discharge should surprise the shooter, preventing anticipation that caused flinching.
Live fire exercises began with close-range targets at 25 meters.
David's first shots scattered across the target face with no clear pattern.
His shooting fundamentals needed work, and the drill sergeants provided immediate correction. "You're jerking the trigger," observed Sergeant Thompson, watching David's technique.
"Pull straight back with steady pressure. Follow through by holding the trigger back for a full second after the shot breaks."
David adjusted his technique and tried again. His shots began grouping closer to the center of the target. Success bred confidence, and confidence improved his shooting performance. By the end of the first day, he was hitting targets consistently at 25 meters.
Combat marksmanship differed from target shooting. Instead of precise single shots, soldiers learned to engage multiple targets rapidly while moving between covered positions. David practiced transitioning between targets, reloading under time pressure, and shooting from improvised firing positions. Night firing exercises introduced additional complications.
Limited visibility required soldiers to use their rifles' night sights and infrared aiming devices. David learned to distinguish between friendly forces and potential threats in low-light conditions.
"Combat rarely happens during perfect daylight conditions," Thompson explained as the platoon prepared for night training.
"You must be able to engage targets effectively in darkness, rain, snow, and other challenging environments." The live fire course simulated combat scenarios with pop-up targets at various ranges. David moved through the course engaging targets as they appeared, using available cover and concealment. His rifle felt natural now, an extension of his body rather than a foreign object. Field training exercises began during week 6. The entire company moved to a wooded training area where they would live outdoors for 5 consecutive days. David packed his rucksack with essential equipment, sleeping bag, poncho, extra ammunition, food, and water. The weight surprised him. His fully loaded pack weighed 68 pounds, and he would carry it for miles through difficult terrain. His shoulders ached within the first hour of movement, but complaining accomplished nothing. Every soldier carried identical loads. Tactical movement through the forest required new skills. David learned to move quietly, avoid silhouetting himself against the skyline, and use natural terrain features for concealment. Urban life had not prepared him for navigation without streets and landmarks. Map reading and compass navigation became essential skills. David practiced plotting coordinates, determining grid azimuths, and triangulating his position using terrain features. Getting lost in combat could mean death for an entire unit. Setting up defensive positions consumed most of the first night. David dug a fighting position according to military specifications, deep enough to provide protection from enemy fire while allowing him to engage targets effectively. The Georgia clay made digging difficult, and his hands developed blisters despite wearing gloves. Guard duty rotated every 2 hours throughout the night. David peered into darkness, listening for sounds that might indicate enemy movement. His imagination transformed normal forest noises into approaching threats. Staying alert during boring guard shifts required mental discipline. Combat rations provided nutrition during field exercises, but the meals bore little resemblance to home cooking. David learned to appreciate food regardless of taste or temperature. Hungry soldiers could not afford to be selective about meal options. Water discipline became critically important. Each soldier carried limited water supplies, and resupply was not guaranteed. David learned to ration his water consumption while maintaining adequate hydration for physical performance. Patrol exercises tested everything the recruits had learned. David's squad moved through the woods toward a simulated enemy position, using hand signals for communication and tactical movement techniques. The mission required approaching the target undetected and gathering intelligence. Leadership rotated among squad members during different exercises. David found himself responsible for planning and executing a patrol mission with 7 other soldiers. The pressure of making decisions that affected others' safety felt overwhelming initially. Leadership is about making decisions with incomplete information, Drill Sergeant Rodriguez explained during an after-action review. Perfect plans rarely survive contact with the enemy. Adapt quickly and keep your soldiers moving toward the objective. David's patrol successfully reached their target area and observed enemy positions without being detected. The return movement proved more challenging as enemy forces had increased security after discovering signs of infiltration. Combat simulations used blank ammunition and training devices that replicated weapon effects without causing injury. David experienced the chaos and confusion of simulated battle while learning to follow orders and execute tactical movements under stress. Casualties during training scenarios taught valuable lessons about combat first aid and evacuation procedures. David learned to treat simulated wounds while continuing the mission. Wounded soldiers required immediate medical attention, but the tactical situation determined evacuation timing. Night combat exercises pushed the recruits beyond their comfort zones. Limited visibility, fatigue, and stress created realistic training conditions. David learned to function effectively despite fear and confusion that accompanied simulated combat. Medical training covered battlefield first aid techniques that could save lives in combat. David practiced treating gunshot wounds, traumatic amputation, and sucking chest wounds using training mannequins and simulated blood. The graphic nature of the training shocked some recruits. "You will see things in combat that civilian life does not prepare you for," explained the medical instructor. Compartmentalizing emotions allows you to function under extreme stress. Process the trauma later with trained counselors. Combat stress reactions affected soldiers differently. Some became hypervigilant, others withdrew emotionally, and a few experienced panic attacks during high-stress exercises. Drill sergeants monitored mental health closely and provided support when necessary. David discovered inner reserves of strength and determination during field training. Physical exhaustion, sleep deprivation, and constant pressure revealed character traits he had never tested. He could endure more hardship than he had believed possible. Team dynamics evolved as soldiers faced shared challenges. Personality conflicts that seemed important in garrison became insignificant during field exercises. Mission accomplishment required everyone to work together regardless of personal feelings. The final week of field training culminated in a company-sized attack on a fortified position. David's platoon provided supporting fire while other units maneuvered to assault positions. Coordinating multiple elements required precise timing and communication. Artillery simulators and machine gun effects created realistic battlefield noise levels. David learned to communicate using hand signals and shouted commands while explosions created chaos around him. The sensory overload prepared him for actual combat conditions. After-action reviews analyzed each exercise in detail. Soldiers discussed what worked well and what required improvement. Honest feedback from drill sergeants and peers helped everyone learn from mistakes without negative consequences. David realized that combat training was changing his fundamental approach to problem solving. Military tactics emphasized speed, violence of action, and decisive leadership. These principles applied beyond combat situations to everyday challenges and decisions. Physical fitness continued improving throughout field training. Carrying heavy equipment over long distances built functional strength that gym workouts could not replicate. David's body composition changed dramatically as muscle replaced fat. Mental resilience developed alongside physical capabilities. David learned to push through discomfort and fatigue while maintaining focus on mission requirements. The ability to perform under stress became a defining characteristic of successful soldiers. Return to garrison life felt strange after 5 days in the field. Hot showers, prepared meals, and sleeping in bed seemed luxurious compared to field conditions. David appreciated comforts he had previously taken for granted. Equipment maintenance consumed the first day back from the field. Every rifle required thorough cleaning and inspection. David disassembled his weapon completely, removing carbon buildup and checking for damage or excessive wear. The transition from field training to graduation preparation marked a significant milestone in basic training. David had survived the most challenging phase and proven his ability to function as a soldier under difficult conditions.
Graduation week arrived with a mixture of pride and anticipation that filled the barracks like electricity. David stood before his wall locker, adjusting his dress blue uniform for the final inspection. The dark fabric with gold buttons represented 13 weeks of transformation that seemed both eternal and instant. His reflection in the small mirror showed changes that extended far beyond physical appearance. David's shoulders were broader, his posture straighter, and his eyes held confidence that had been absent 3 months earlier. The scared teenager who had stepped off the bus at reception had become a soldier. "Final inspection in 10 minutes, announced Drill Sergeant Rodriguez, his voice carrying the familiar authority that had shaped David's daily existence since arrival. "This is your opportunity to demonstrate everything you've learned about military bearing, attention to detail, and personal accountability." David checked his uniform one last time. Brass buttons gleamed from careful polishing. Ribbons aligned perfectly above his left breast pocket. His shoes reflected the overhead lights like black mirrors. Every detail met the exacting standards that had been drilled into him through countless previous inspections. The inspection team moved through the barracks systematically, examining each soldier's appearance and living area. David stood at attention beside his bunk, eyes focused straight ahead while senior drill sergeants scrutinized his uniform for any imperfection. "Outstanding, soldier," commented the company first sergeant after examining David's ribbons and name tape alignment. The brief acknowledgement carried tremendous weight. Earning respect from senior leaders validated months of hard work and sacrifice. Alpha Company formed up outside the barracks for their final march to the graduation ceremony. Family members filled bleacher seats around the parade field, many seeing their transformed sons and daughters for the first time since basic training began. David spotted his parents in the crowd. His mother was crying already, and his father stood with military bearing that suggested his own service years earlier. Their faces showed pride mixed with amazement at the young man their boy had become. The graduation ceremony followed military traditions dating back centuries. Companies marched in perfect formation while their guidon bearers carried unit colors that represented honor and sacrifice of previous generations. David felt connected to a legacy larger than himself. Guest speakers included senior officers who had commanded combat units in Iraq and Afghanistan. Their words carried weight because they had experienced the realities that basic training prepared soldiers to face. Combat was not theoretical for these leaders, it was personal experience that shaped their perspectives. "You have completed the first step in becoming professional soldiers," announced Colonel Williams, the base commander. "Basic training provides the foundation, but your military education continues throughout your career. Never stop learning, never stop growing, and never forget the oath you swore to defend our Constitution." David thought about the oath of enlistment he had recited on arrival. The words had seemed abstract then: defending against enemies foreign and domestic, bearing true faith and allegiance, obeying orders of appointed officers. 13 weeks of training had given those concepts concrete meaning. Individual awards recognized outstanding achievement during training. David received recognition for improved physical fitness. His 2-mile run time had dropped to 14 minutes and 38 seconds. The improvement represented hundreds of early morning workouts and personal determination. The ceremony concluded with the traditional passing of guidons from drill sergeants to newly graduated soldiers. David accepted his unit's colors with hands that no longer trembled under pressure. The flag represented responsibility, tradition, and commitment to something greater than individual concerns. Family Day provided the first opportunity for extended interaction with loved ones since training began. David's parents marveled at his physical transformation and military bearing. Conversations revealed how his perspective on challenge, discipline, and personal responsibility had evolved. "You sound different," observed his mother during lunch at a nearby restaurant. "More confident, more mature. It's like you found something you didn't know was missing." David struggled to explain the internal changes that basic training had created. The experience was deeply personal and difficult to communicate to people who had never faced similar challenges. Military service provided identity and purpose that civilian life had not offered. His father, a Vietnam veteran, understood the transformation better than David's mother. Military service created shared experiences that transcended generational differences.
They discussed the continuation of family military tradition and the pride that came with honorable service. Advanced individual training awaited David at Fort Gordon, Georgia, where he would learn his military occupational specialty as a signal analyst. The technical training would last 16 weeks and prepare him for his first duty assignment with an active duty unit. Drill Sergeant Thompson pulled David aside for a final conversation before departure. Their relationship had evolved from adversarial to mentoring during training. The drill sergeant had pushed hardest because he saw potential that David had not recognized in himself. "Remember what you learned here," Thompson said seriously. "Physical fitness, attention to detail, and never quitting when things get difficult. Those qualities will serve you throughout your military career and beyond. Don't let anyone convince you that you're not capable of great things." David packed his belongings carefully, including civilian clothes that he had not worn for 13 weeks. The clothing felt strange and uncomfortable compared to military uniforms that had become his normal attire. His civilian identity felt like a costume from a previous life. Letters from high school friends revealed how differently his life had progressed compared to theirs. They wrote about college parties, part-time jobs, and social media drama that seemed trivial after military training. David realized that his priorities and values had shifted fundamentally. The bus ride to Fort Gordon provided time for reflection on basic training experiences. David thought about fellow soldiers who had quit during the early weeks and wondered if they regretted their decisions. Completing basic training required mental toughness that not everyone possessed. Some recruits from his original platoon had been recycled to repeat training phases due to injuries or academic failures. Their extended stay at Fort Benning served as reminders that success was not guaranteed despite good intentions and hard work. David's battle buddy from basic training would attend a different advanced training school for military police. Their friendship had developed through shared hardships and mutual support during difficult training periods. Military service created bonds that civilian friendships rarely matched. The graduation ceremony had marked the end of basic training, but David understood that his military education was just beginning. Advanced training would provide technical skills, but basic training had provided the foundation: discipline, physical fitness, and mental resilience. His first drill sergeant inspection seemed like ancient history, though it had occurred only 13 weeks earlier. The terrified teenager who had struggled to fold t-shirts properly had become a soldier capable of functioning under extreme stress and pressure. Physical fitness had improved dramatically beyond David's expectations. His body composition had changed completely: 30 pounds of fat replaced by muscle and improved cardiovascular capacity. More importantly, he had learned that physical limits were largely mental constructs. Combat skills training had provided confidence in his ability to defend himself and others. Weapons handling, tactical movement, and first aid training prepared him for situations that civilian life would never require. These skills provided security and self-reliance. Leadership opportunities during field exercises revealed capabilities David had never recognized. Making decisions under pressure, caring for subordinates' welfare, and accepting responsibility for mission outcomes had developed leadership potential that would serve him throughout his career. The mental transformation proved more significant than physical changes. David's approach to problems, challenges, and setbacks had evolved completely. Military training taught systematic problem solving and the importance of maintaining focus under stress. Character development occurred through facing situations that tested personal values and commitment. David had learned the difference between giving up and pushing through discomfort. Mental toughness became a defining characteristic that would influence future decisions. Advanced individual training would provide technical expertise in electronic warfare and signal intelligence. The specialized knowledge would prepare David for his role in gathering information that supported combat operations and strategic planning. Career opportunities in military intelligence offered advancement potential and civilian job skills that translated well to post-military employment. David's decision to enlist was already paying dividends in terms of training, education benefits, and professional development. The transformation from civilian to soldier represented more than career change; it was personal reinvention that had revealed strengths and capabilities David had never suspected. Basic training had provided tools for success that extended far beyond military applications. As the bus approached Fort Gordon, David felt excitement about continuing his military education and, eventually joining an operational unit. Basic training had prepared him for the challenges ahead while instilling confidence in his ability to adapt and overcome obstacles. Drill Sergeant Rodriguez's words echoed in David's mind, 13 weeks to transform civilians into soldiers. When you walk out of Fort Benning, you'll be armed to kill. The transformation was complete, but David understood that being armed meant more than carrying weapons. It meant possessing the mental and physical tools necessary to protect others and accomplish missions under any circumstances. The journey from civilian to soldier had required sacrifice, determination, and willingness to change fundamental aspects of his identity. David had discovered inner strength he had never tested and capabilities he had never developed. Basic training had not just prepared him for military service, it had prepared him for life.